She just wanted to eat a free hot dog. But was scolded by her father for losing face. After that, he gave her 5 cents to go buy one herself. However, the little girl resolutely refused. "I don't want to buy it. I want to win it." Originally thinking his daughter was just being temporarily stubborn. Unexpectedly, Trudy actually did it. No one knows where she got a ukulele from. She started making noise day and night. Not only singing at home, but also singing at her father's butcher shop. The noise made the neighbors complain. In the end, even her older sister and younger brother couldn't stand it. But she still had no intention of stopping. "I will win." At midnight that night, the father's patience finally reached its limit. Faced with his stubborn daughter, the father could only surrender. Just like that, Trudy happily ran away, heading towards the world she dreamed of. And in 1926, she became the first woman in the world to successfully swim across the English Channel. And the reason for all of this was because when she was young, she witnessed a ship burning in New York Harbor with her own eyes. At that time, nearly 1,000 women died in the fire. But the ship was clearly only about 10 meters from the shore. Trudy didn't understand why they had to stay on the ship to be burned alive. They could swim. It was this accident that made Trudy's mother determined to teach her daughters to swim. However, in America in 1914, it was impossible for women to want to swim. Not only were there strict regulations on women's swimwear, but even slightly exposing their thighs would get them arrested by the police. Even large public swimming pools only designated a few square meters specifically for women. More importantly, Trudy was sick, and the doctor said that water should not get into her ears, otherwise she would become deaf. However, when she heard that swimming around the pier could win a free hot dog, Trudy insisted on learning to swim. Finally, faced with his wife's request and his daughter's coercion, the father was forced to surrender. But to ensure his daughter's safety, he still tied a rope to his daughter. When she first touched the sea water, Trudy seemed a little scared. But very quickly, she was encouraged by her older sister and, like a wild horse off the leash, plunged into the water. Just like that, Trudy and her older sister became rare girls who knew how to swim at that time. From then on, they had countless free hot dogs to eat. It's just that their swimming style was still the most primitive doggy paddle. At that time, breaststroke was still the only precious swimming style. But they could only see a little bit of it in men's competitions. That day, Trudy blurted out to her older sister, "I think you could win if you participated in the competition." The referees on the sidelines showed contempt for this, mocking her, compared to a German shepherd, maybe. As a result, she was scolded by her mother. That night, her mother announced at the dinner table that she would let her 2 daughters join a professional women's swimming team. Hearing this, the father laughed like a pig grunting. Because in his perception, there was no such thing as a women's swimming team at all. To this, the mother did not refute, because what the father didn't know was that at that time there was already a secret women's swimming team. Here, the 2 sisters saw a completely new swimming style, the American crawl, which is also the freestyle we are familiar with today. When the mother suggested wanting to meet the man in charge here, the female coach smiled and replied, "There are no men here." It turned out that the female coach always firmly believed that women were absolutely not inferior to men. For example, lionesses hunt prey, queen bees in beehives, and she is the manager here. The mother proudly introduced her 2 daughters. However, as soon as they got into the water, their doggy paddle made everyone laugh. The coach was a little embarrassed, but she was still willing to accept the older sister who seemed to have potential, but Trudy, who swam like a lame horse, should forget it. If she was willing to work hard at stoking the furnace, she could be an auditor. The mother immediately agreed for Trudy. Very quickly, the older sister showed talent in the swimming team, becoming the student most valued by the coach. However, Trudy could only be busy stoking the furnace, while observing and pondering. Waiting until after work, she went to the sea to practice on her own, but still couldn't grasp the secret. Therefore, she was ridiculed by the other girls many times. But Trudy never fought back. Finally, one day, even the coach couldn't stand it anymore. She advised Trudy, "You don't even know how to fight back, go home." However, Trudy said, "It's because you don't let me go into the pool." It turned out that she clearly understood that respect must be earned through strength. The coach was moved by her stubbornness on the spot and announced a new rule. From now on, there will be competitions every day, and the last one to finish will have to stoke the furnace. At first, her movements were clumsy, and she swam very slowly. The coach guided her while beating time to help her swim. Every day she was still always last, and still had to stoke the furnace. But just being able to get into the water made her very happy. When others rested, she was practicing. When others went on dates, she was also practicing. When the swimming pool closed, she went to the sea to practice more. After losing countless times, finally one day, she was no longer the last one. Ruth stoked the furnace. Not long after, the Australian women's team came to challenge them. Her older sister was the biggest trump card of the American team this time, and Trudy was brought up just to make up the numbers. Before the game, the coach instructed her older sister in every detail, but for Trudy, it was, just don't get in other people's way. Because she had no competition experience, when Trudy started, her foot slipped, and she fell into the water. As soon as she entered the water, she was left behind by several body lengths. Fortunately, no one in the stands paid attention to her, their eyes were all focused on her older sister, all cheering for her in suspense. Only her mother paid attention to Trudy in last place. When others had finished the first leg, Trudy had only swam halfway. However, very quickly she began to accelerate and overtake. When everyone noticed, she had chased up from last place to third place. Even the commentators who saw it were surprised. Immediately afterwards, Trudy overtook her older sister, getting close to the Australian athlete. Even the coach found it unbelievable. In the end, she overtook the Australian athlete, winning first place. The entire stands erupted in cheers. They couldn't believe that a reserve athlete who was mistakenly chosen could come from behind in an unfavorable situation at the beginning. From then on, Trudy's career was like being buffed with strength, from first in the whole town to first in the whole city, and then to first in the whole country. And breaking historical records in many categories many times. Championship cups were received until her hands were sore, and reporters flocked to her, but the question they were most concerned about was, can you cook? Can you dance? Do you have a boyfriend yet? They all unanimously believed that a daughter becoming a shining star, isn't it just to marry into a wealthy family? Even the father had such thoughts. When the mother proudly threw the medal onto the meat stall, the father indifferently threw it into the drawer. Compared to his daughter's many world records, what he was more concerned about was whether his daughter could marry someone of equal social status. So soon after, a stranger suddenly came to the house. This was a blind date arranged by the father for Trudy. The other party was a German who had just moved in, working in the chestnut business. Therefore, he could only speak a little fluent English. Nuts, haha. Trudy didn't want to get married so early, and wanted to ask her mother's opinion. The mother hinted that she could give him a lesson. That night, the two went for a walk on the pier together. Just as the young man was about to express something, a cry for help from her older sister suddenly came from a distance. As soon as Trudy ran over, her older sister grabbed Trudy's arm and pulled her down. Seeing the two sisters disappear in the blink of an eye, the young man was terrified. Help, help. Seeing the two of them laughing happily, the father's face turned black with anger. If you don't marry, are you planning to live by swimming? In fact, the two sisters were not unaware of their fate, it's just that at this time, when they were young and impulsive, they still hadn't learned how to bow their heads to fate. A few days later, a real opportunity came. The U.S. Olympic Committee wanted to invite Trudy to represent the United States in the 1924 Paris Olympics. If she could win a gold medal, perhaps her fate would be different. Trudy seemed to see hope. However, the chairman of the committee originally didn't want her to win, and didn't even want any woman to win. Therefore, the Olympic Committee deliberately found an old-fashioned male coach, using the excuse of protecting the safety of young girls, to restrict and supervise them. The room was deliberately arranged next to the air conditioning room, noisy day and night, making it impossible to sleep well. Men practiced in the swimming pool on the deck every day, but they were not allowed to set foot on the deck. Under the guise of, for the safety of the girls. To the point that in more than 3 weeks on the ship, they didn't have a chance to get into the water once. When they got into the water again, it was already the competition at the Olympics. Because they hadn't practiced for more than 20 consecutive days, Trudy was not in good shape at all, and only won a bronze medal. No one knows all the shady things behind the scenes. If given the opportunity, they are fully capable of standing on the highest podium. When they returned home, the male athletes who achieved results received a warm welcome, but the women's swimming team did not receive any applause. This time, the conspiracy of the chairman of the committee and the male coach finally succeeded. Because they could not achieve good results, the U.S. Olympic Committee decided to disband the women's swimming team. Looking at the trophies being packed up by her father, Trudy felt that her career was about to end. However, what made her even sadder was that her younger brother told her the news that her older sister was about to get married. Previously, her older sister also had someone she loved, but had never received her father's consent. Because her father thought that the other party's prominent family background was beyond our reach. Sure enough, the person her older sister was about to marry was not the one she loved, but a marriage arranged for her by her father. Trudy blamed herself very much. She thought it was because she didn't win a gold medal. But her older sister said to her, "This world will not care about women's wins or losses, let alone they don't want us to become heroes." Her older sister ultimately compromised with reality. "My hero is you, sister." This made Trudy confused. Once upon a time, swimming made them shine, and also made them seem to see a glimmer of hope to escape fate. Daughters may not need to marry, and can also gain status and respect. But in the end, half a lifetime of perseverance changed nothing. No matter how many cups she won, how many records she broke, in the end, she was still just a butcher's daughter, waiting to be married in the eyes of the world. After that, she often went to the beach, staring blankly at the sea. That day, she suddenly saw a scene of a girl being arrested by the police for dressing too revealingly. Is this how women's fate should be? Until one day, a few girls came to her. The girl said, "You are our hero, because of you, we have the opportunity to learn to swim. When I grow up, I also want to be as successful as you." At this moment, Trudy was touched. It turned out that her efforts were not meaningless. Hope rekindled in her heart. And this time, she had a goal even greater than the Olympics, which was to challenge the English Channel, known as the Everest of the seas. At that time, only 5 men in the whole world had successfully challenged it. The government also offered a generous reward of £1,000. Trudy just needed to turn her head, and her older sister understood her intention. So on her wedding day, her older sister left her husband and a large number of guests, came to the pier, and talked to her younger sister who was staring blankly at the sea. Her older sister directly stated her younger sister's intention, and encouraged her, "If you want to, you must try." After that, Trudy went to her enlightening coach again. At first, the coach was very worried. If Trudy's challenge failed or she was injured in the process, it would create a perfect excuse for the chairman of the committee and his gang to completely close this place down. However, Trudy firmly asked the coach, "What if I can do it?" Then they are in big trouble. Back home, Trudy immediately announced this matter to her family. The father said, "I don't agree." Trudy just said indifferently, "I'm just informing everyone, not asking for everyone's opinion." To raise enough funds, the coach led Trudy to the chairman of the committee again. Having been against female athletes his whole life, he was even less likely to agree to this. Not to mention that he also didn't believe Trudy could complete this. The English Channel not only has very low water temperatures all year round, but also countless poisonous jellyfish and sharks inside. Not only is the direction of the ocean current unpredictable, but sometimes the waves are as high as 6 meters, which is terrifying. He was not worried that Trudy would lose her life because of this, but worried that a failed challenge would bring him a bad reputation. However, Trudy had no intention of giving up. Knowing that the chairman of the committee was rushing to New Jersey to have dinner with his mother, she decisively suggested, "I can swim there from underwater." The chairman of the committee was shocked by her courage, so he made a bet with her, "If you can swim 11 kilometers in 3 hours, I will agree to sponsor you." At 6:30, after Trudy jumped into the water in New York, the chairman of the committee drove to the party. During the meal, he occasionally took out his expensive gold watch to check the time. Until the dinner ended at 9:30, he still didn't see Trudy. Just as he smugly thought that Trudy had failed, he found that Trudy was already sitting in his car. And the whole process only took 12 hours and 56 minutes. The chairman of the committee had nothing to say. However, the mother who had always supported her, this time began to worry. It turned out that she had a twin sister who died from drowning when she was very young. When the mother realized that Trudy's courage all came from her, she could only turn into unconditional support. In the summer of 1926, Trudy came to Calais, France, which is the starting point for crossing the English Channel. Accompanying her was the male coach from the previous Olympics. Although Trudy hated this bastard very much, under the threat of funding cuts from the chairman of the committee, she had no choice but to agree. As soon as they arrived at the training location, everyone was commemorating the challengers who had accidents last week. Seeing a woman walking in, a man holding a glass of wine walked over. "This is a place for men to risk challenging. What are you, a weak woman, doing here?" However, Trudy was not weak either, but directly raised her glass of wine towards the man's teammates to pay her respects. Very quickly, the news, "Woman wants to challenge the English Channel," was like a thunderbolt, resounding around the world. In this era of male chauvinism, Trudy's odds directly soared to 100 to 1. Almost everyone thought that this was an impossible challenge to complete. And her male coach also carried prejudice. In order to make her look good in the newspaper, he only allowed her to eat a little fruit to satisfy her hunger every day. This made Ken, who had once made things difficult for her, also unable to stand it anymore. So he secretly gave her a plate of meat. Gradually, the two became very good training partners. Ken had challenged the English Channel 12 times, and had been very close to the finish line, but was always suddenly pushed into the sandbar by the ocean current. That is the last difficult hurdle to reach the finish line. Not long after, Ken welcomed his 13th challenge in life. However, not long after, he was carried ashore by the rescue team. It turned out that as soon as he swam halfway, he encountered a torrent, and by the time the rescue team found him, he was in a state of severe hypothermia. Facing Trudy, who came to visit, he hoped Trudy would have good luck. On July 20, 1926, Trudy also welcomed her challenge. The beach was crowded with newspaper reporters, all vying to report on this woman who set foot on history for the first time. At this moment, the eyes of the whole world were focused on Trudy. Under everyone's gaze, she jumped into the water and began the challenge. When the enlightening coach learned that Trudy was using the freestyle she taught, she felt extremely proud. Seeing that Trudy had swam 4 miles, but still maintained a good state, not tired at all, this made the male coach on the guiding boat a little anxious. It turned out that before departure, he had promised the chairman of the committee, "Trudy will definitely not swim more than 7 miles. Afterwards, he used the excuse of conserving energy to tell Trudy to slow down. Seeing Trudy just smile and let it go, he used the excuse of replenishing energy again to give Trudy an apple, but deliberately raised the apple very high, making it impossible for Trudy to reach it. Because as long as the challenger has body contact with another person, it will be judged as a failed challenge. In the end, the male coach's trick not only did not succeed, but he himself almost fell into the water. One trick failed, he changed to another. Afterwards, he used the excuse of replenishing water and gave water to her. Trudy was not prepared, and took it and drank it directly. As a result, not long after she felt dizzy and weak limbs. It turned out that the male coach had put seasickness medicine with sedative effects in her water. After struggling a few times, Trudy finally floated to the surface of the sea. Just like that, Trudy's challenge ended in failure. Hearing this news, countless women sitting by the radio waiting for Trudy's good news, could only silently turn off the lights, and once again sink into darkness. But the father had changed his view of his daughter. He was both proud of his daughter, and also felt guilty for not being by her side. Therefore, in order not to let his daughter fall into a situation where she was alone and no one helped her again, he quit his job and rushed to Trudy's side at the fastest speed. And the one who came with him was also her older sister. Family is always Trudy's strongest backing. Just when the three of them were discussing the matter of quickly going home, Bill, who had successfully crossed the English Channel, suddenly came to them. It turned out that he had been observing Trudy for a while. He believed that with Trudy's normal strength, she should not suddenly drown when she hadn't even swam 1/3 of the distance. The only possibility was that someone was secretly playing tricks. At this time, Trudy remembered that the male coach had a habit of carrying seasickness medicine with him, and she also started feeling unwell after drinking the tea. Her older sister suggested taking advantage of the media to expose that bastard. However, who would believe the words of a loser? Only by using strength can respect be regained. Afterwards, Bill volunteered to be the guide. Although the father did not agree with this suggestion, Trudy did not want to return empty-handed, so she agreed without hesitation. Because this matter could not be known by that damned male coach, Trudy could only board the ship back to America with everyone. After boarding the ship, she quietly sneaked to the porthole. Below was Bill and her family coming to meet and rescue her. Afterwards, she jumped down without hesitation. Immediately afterwards, they once again came to where the dream began. In the days when Trudy resumed training, Bill drew up a detailed route and strategy for her. When she found that her swimsuit was always rubbing against her body causing injuries, her skillful older sister stayed up all night to modify the swimsuit for her younger sister. On August 6, 1926, Trudy once again launched a challenge to the English Channel. However, before she even set off, reporters suddenly flocked from nowhere. Before they could surround her, Trudy quickly jumped into the water one step ahead. On the boat, her older sister played her favorite song, which also made Trudy in the water even more excited. At this time, her mother in America still knew nothing, until the households opposite turned on the radio one after another. Did she know that Trudy had once again launched a challenge to the sea? So she immediately ran to the radio station to follow her daughter's latest progress. If nothing unexpected happened, then the unexpected began to come. When the ocean current began to change, the experienced Bill immediately adjusted the direction, leading Trudy to swim with the ocean current. Although it would increase the travel distance, this would minimize her physical exertion. But at this time, two boats full of reporters slowly approached. They were amazed by Trudy's swimsuit, trying to take close-up shots of these rare photos. Seeing that the boat had reached a dangerous area, they ignored her older sister's warning. Bill decisively fired a shot at them, warning, "Whoever dares to approach again, I will shoot them dead." Just after solving this trouble, Trudy's goggles began to leak water. She had to throw her goggles onto the boat. Before her older sister could fix the goggles, countless red jellyfish suddenly appeared in front. The tentacles of this type of jellyfish are all poisonous, and once they touch the skin, it is even more painful than a whip. Looking at the range of jellyfish in front of her, going around was impossible. Trudy could only take a deep breath and accelerate swimming towards the jellyfish swarm. This operation surprised the reporters on the small boat. Next, she directly went through the jellyfish swarm. Every time she took a breath, she let out a miserable cry. To this, the father and older sister were helpless. The only thing they could do was silently pray for her. When she tried her best to swim out of this terrifying jellyfish sea, her body was already full of wounds from jellyfish stings. Not only that, but the sea water kept eroding her wounds. Pain and fatigue made her temporarily lose all strength to move forward. Just as she was resting on the surface of the sea, her older sister used candle tears to fix her swimming goggles, then threw them into the sea, reminding her to continue moving forward. Just like that, Trudy put on her swimming goggles and set off again. At this time, she had been in the water for 8 hours, and was less than half the distance from the finish line. But very quickly, Trudy encountered a strong ocean current again. She tried to swim for an hour, but found that she was still treading water. Seeing that she was exhausted and about to collapse, her older sister immediately took off her coat and jumped into the sea. Because she knew that Trudy was inherently unwilling to be inferior to anyone, as long as someone was ahead, she would desperately chase after them. Sure enough, under the older sister's kind provocation, Trudy regained her spirits and excitedly chased after her. However, not long after, her older sister was physically and mentally exhausted, shivering from the cold. She really didn't know how Trudy had persisted for so long. Waiting until her older sister got on the boat, Trudy also took the opportunity to replenish her energy. Continuously eating 3 chicken drumsticks, she accelerated at full speed again towards the finish line. At this time, she was less than 6 miles from the target, which also meant that she had completed more than 2/3 of the challenge, and had surpassed most of the men who participated in the challenge. However, this last section is also the most dangerous sea area of the English Channel. Countless challengers have lost their lives in this place. At this time, thick fog had risen on the sea. Bill stared intently at the sea, still seeing the scene he least wanted to see. The unpredictable ocean current had pushed them into the sandbar, and previously stranded ships could be seen everywhere. Bill's guiding boat could only be forced to shore, which meant that, for this last section of the road, she could only rely on Trudy's own judgment. Next, she had to face the dark water and the raging waves alone. No one could guide her. Once she got lost, it was almost synonymous with a death sentence. The father, worried about his daughter's safety, wanted to choose to give up. He told Bill to pull Trudy ashore. But Bill had promised Trudy, no matter what, absolutely do not pull her ashore. Her older sister also felt that Trudy should persevere and continue. Most importantly, Trudy herself had never thought of giving up. "I love you all." After saying goodbye to her family, she resolutely swam into the distance, beginning to truly face the challenge alone. But not long after, what the father was most worried about still happened. On the dark sea, due to the effect of the tide, the waves became even more turbulent. Finally, Trudy lost her direction. In the boundless sea, Trudy began to search helplessly, trying to catch a ray of light. But all around her was only endless darkness. Trudy gradually began to collapse. At this time, her physical strength had also reached its limit. She didn't know where she was, and even less did she know where she was going. At the same time, the mother also learned the news that her daughter was missing. However, she could not do anything, and could only silently pray in her heart. After a while, Trudy began to desperately drift with the current. Even the swimming goggles repaired by her older sister sank to the bottom of the sea. While the father and older sister held oil lamps, lighting up hope for Trudy at the end of the journey. But the oil lamp light was too weak, completely unable to shine more than a few meters. The possibility of Trudy seeing it was extremely small. However, at this moment, a noisy commotion came from behind. It turned out to be local women in England spontaneously organizing, lighting bonfires on the beach, just to guide Trudy forward. At this moment, the whole world was praying for her, and Trudy, who was almost losing consciousness, also saw the fire of hope and despair. At this moment, Trudy was finally not fighting alone, but tens of thousands of women were giving her strength. Having a direction to move forward, Trudy quickly mobilized her whole body's energy, and then swam towards the finish line with all her strength. Not long after, Bill, who was waiting on the shore, was the first to discover Trudy. Everyone's hanging hearts were finally relieved at this moment. People began to flock to the beach, all to witness this historic moment. After soaking in the water for more than 10 consecutive hours, Trudy's hands finally touched land again. When she stood up with difficulty, exhausted, everyone on the shore cheered for her, applauding for her. At this moment, Trudy not only conquered the sea, but also with a time of 14 hours and 31 minutes, surpassed the previous men's record by nearly 2 hours. Most importantly, she defeated the deeply rooted social prejudice, slapping the ugly faces of those scum. The female coach was even so excited that she danced with joy. When Trudy returned to the United States, more than 2 million New Yorkers spontaneously took to the streets, standing on both sides of Broadway to welcome this true hero. This parade can be said to be unprecedented, because New York had never held such a grand ceremony for an athlete, regardless of whether they were male or female. And Trudy shared this supreme glory with her enlightening coach and family. Young Woman and the Sea, directed by Joachim Ronning and starring Daisy Ridley, is a biographical film released in 2024. The film is adapted from real people and events. After Trudy successfully crossed the English Channel, she unfortunately still lost her hearing. Afterwards, she devoted her whole life to teaching children to swim, and passed away in 2003, at the age of 98. In a society where lack of talent in women is a virtue, more than 100 years ago, when women were not even allowed to swim, leading to when accidents occurred at sea, women had no ability to protect themselves at all. Trudy, when she was only 7 or 8 years old, heard this bad news, and immediately sowed the seeds of learning to swim in her heart. Although her father strongly opposed her idea, her mother strongly agreed, and regardless of all objections, took both her daughters to a secret swimming team. And Trudy also showed extraordinary talent and ability in the field of swimming. The first time she was allowed to participate in a competition, she immediately became famous. Afterwards, she was selected to participate in the Olympics. It's just a pity that the members of the Olympic Committee at that time, including the male coach, did not want women to stand out on the international stage, so they deliberately created obstacles and suppressed female athletes. It is true that a speck of dust of the times, falling on everyone's shoulders is a huge mountain. Although Trudy wanted to resist the injustice of fate, her personal strength was too small, completely unable to fight against the prejudice of the times. However, a small spark can burn down a whole field. Even if only she herself awakened at the beginning, she could gradually lead others to change. Aware of this, she decided to challenge the English Channel that only men had successfully challenged. And when she was the first woman to successfully challenge it, and the time was nearly 2 hours shorter than that of men, the prejudice of the times against women also gradually melted away. Trudy's greatness does not only lie in the fact that Trudy is great. Not only in that she completed a feat that can be recorded in history, but more importantly, she used her strong will and indomitable fighting spirit to break the low sky above women's heads, encouraging countless women to embark on the path of breaking down discrimination and prejudice, and opening up a new situation for the feminist movement around the world. And on Trudy's road to success, it was not only Trudy who shone alone. Behind her, there was also a group of women who were both beautiful and steadfast. They are mothers, older sisters, female coaches, and also unfamiliar women. At that time, their strength was still weak, still not enough to resist, but under mutual encouragement and help, there was always someone to take the lead and pave the way, and as long as one person could shake the secular world, we would enter a completely new world, see the strength of women, see the potential of women, and see more and more women creating more possibilities. Okay, today's movie summary and review will be shared here. Please leave a comment, like and subscribe to Movie Recap Online channel to support me. See you guys in the next movie.